responsibilities to municipalities unless there is provision for resources required to fulfill those responsibilities. And finally, that consultation is needed, not desirable, but needed on matters of mutual interest, and it specifically lists things like changes to local government legislation and changes on matters that are within municipal authority. Those are, to my mind, very wise principles, and they're written into law and they're broken with caution. In my opinion, that the province is stepping into municipal matters without the respective jurisdiction or consultation required by the Charter, and without providing the resources required for any new responsibilities. The province is further limiting our ability to even determine public interest by blocking our ability to consult with our community, particularly in the current process. Speaking more broadly, I'm concerned about a recent shift in tone from the provincial leadership, messaging that appears to be looking for scapegoats rather than partnerships, and the erosion of democratic principles, using a crisis as an excuse. Specifically on tone, recent news articles had provincial leadership use terms like the naughty list for our housing priority communities, poison pills to describe basic land use planning tools used by municipalities, and NIMBYs to describe anybody with a disagreeing opinion. Language is important, and this language is, I believe, used to diminish points of view different from their own and create an artificial good guys versus bad guys narrative. I just want to point out that good ideas can come from anywhere, and the more care should be used to keep everybody engaged. The language from provincial leadership turns good people off engaging and indicates new ideas are not welcome, which is not what we need when we're trying to address a crisis. On the matter of scapegoating, we have a real housing crisis on our hands, one that is global, national, and regional, and one that is 30 to 40 years in the making, and one that has clearly no easy solutions. The challenges require innovative ideas, partnerships, and both public and market solutions. The current process appears to be more concerned with assigning blame to municipalities than looking for ways the province can help. For instance, by investing in technology or policy changes that could help address the barriers to land use applications. Our responsibility as municipal elected officials is to see land use decisions made with a vision for the future that balances, of course, housing, but also fiscal needs, growth, environment, business vibrance, recreation services, parks, service levels in general, public safety, infrastructure, etc. It's complicated, it's often tedious, it's often technical work that municipal councils across the province dedicate their time and knowledge to and are held accountable to our electorate for. Municipal governments are here to help the province achieve their goals and can best do so through policy and operational changes that support provincial, federal, and market housing development needs. I just want the provincial government to treat municipalities as partners, not as enemies, because none of us can fix this alone. And finally, on democracy, municipalities have been established under provincial law as a kind of democratic ideal, and I think some people watching might not recognize the fact that, but just the fact that our meetings are held in the public view, we share all of our decision-making data with the public, we welcome public input on almost all issues in front of council. I can say unequivocally, while this public-first approach can slow discussions and make issues messy at times, there is overall far more good than bad that comes from public engagement. It's critical, to my mind, for good decision-making, helping ensure that all the pros and cons of an issue are aired and considered, and it often brings phenomenal expertise to the table as well. As seen in the current directive to keep data secret on the provincial housing targets, we are in danger of losing the openness and transparency that our community expects from us at a municipal level. I reject the idea that public dialogue harms decision-making. Yes, democratic debate is messy and sometimes slow, but also helps ensure that efficiency, value, and innovation are the result. At the municipal level, our decisions, particularly land use and the supporting infrastructure, often stay in place for over 100 years, so it's worth getting the decisions right. I'm almost done. I just say we should all be concerned when democratic principles are rolled back in the name of a crisis. There's a saying which says, never let a crisis go to waste, which I believe was first applied to political crises after medical crises from Alinsky's work, which highlighted how totalitarian governments use crises to reduce freedoms and increase centralized control. I just think, and I would argue, given the many crises that cross jurisdictional boundaries right now, including homelessness, climate change, toxic drug supplies, overdoses, and housing, that this is the time we leverage the strengths of democracy and the public we serve. So I have a message, it would be this: we just want to find solutions. We've been having this housing conversation with our public, and it's not been a NIMBY discussion. It's been looking with open minds at the risks and opportunities of different approaches and how best to implement the changes. We'd like to work in partnership with the province and, yes, allow the public to participate in that discussion as we work to find the best solutions. It may be messy, but that's democracy. We're now going to move after the next item in camera to talk about land use planning at the province's direction. That is contrary to our best practices. But it is being requested and required. We will provide feedback next week in camera to the province as required on those provincial targets. But I do hope we can soon talk meaningfully with our community and to the province about what is being directed and how we can turn top-down targets into successful implementation. Thank you. One item on the agenda, probably shorter than that speech, which is our request or a matter being brought forward looking at the potential for supporting the All Nations South Island powwow. There's no staff report attached to this. This just came as a request from the Songhees by way of a letter from City of Victoria to request that. I don't know if the staff has anything they wish to add to it, but I will just point out for those who weren't around last year, the municipality did support the powwow to the tune of $10,000 in the last term. And so there's a range anywhere from, I think it's $1,000 to $25,000 in terms of sponsorship levels. And there was no requirement here by law or anything else for us to support it. I was going to treat this as more or less a grant application. We have had one letter from the public on the matter. There's one member of public here. I'm not sure if you wish to address council on this item or not. No, okay. Thank you. So with that, we will just come back to this table and go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks so much. I know that we have a little bit of money left in our grants bucket, and I'm wondering if we have any idea of how much it is. In my head, I'm thinking it was around $5,000, but I'm just wondering if there's not enough to support, if staff could let me know where the other money would come from to support it at that level.
Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our Director of Finance is not here this evening, but he did advise me that it would come out of the corporate contingency, unless there was a surplus in the corporate budget, in which case it would just come out of there. And that perhaps it might be helpful if council is favorable to the sponsorship level to have it rolled into the full amount for next year for the granting program. So we put it in as a line item for each year, but I will leave that to council.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Go ahead, Councillor.
In that case, if there's no other questions, I would make a motion that we support at the $10,000 level.
Seconded. That's a lot of seconds, so I'm guessing that probably has support, but you had your hand up, Councillor Smart.
Yes, through you, Mayor. Just a question to staff. Was there any direction as to a recommended level for municipalities or precedents from last year of how much other municipalities contributed?
I'm going off of memory on that one because certainly not everybody participated. Certainly City of Victoria sponsored at the platinum level at $25,000 plus providing the Royal Athletic Park. Esquimalt was in. I'm not sure if they were at the, I don't know what level they were at. And there's, I think, 3 or 4 other municipalities as well that were, but not all had participated. All right, we have a motion on the table and no other hands up for questions or comments. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Just a question and a comment. I'm sorry, just for clarification, we're suggesting that for next year it be rolled into the grant and aid process. Is that correct? Is that what people were saying, or have I misunderstood that?
Well, the motion on the floor right now is just to approve the this time. I might suggest as part of the motion arising after this is to ask staff to include that in the draft budget so that we can consider that as part of our budgeting for next year. As
Okay,
part of our
thank
standard
you.
Budget.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? That carries. And then do you wish to make a motion to direct staff to bring back this as a recurring amount in the draft budget for next year?
Yes, but just for clarity, this would not then be part of the grant and aid process. It would be something separate?
I would suggest you just ask that the amount be brought back next year and staff can bring back to us advice in terms of where that should sit in terms of transparency.
And I'm just saying this because I would hate to see this process become too politicized. Grants and aid decision making is difficult at the best of times. So I would hope that there would be perhaps another funding mechanism or tool that would enable this to be an ongoing contribution without difficulty. So I will make the motion to.
Yeah, just before we get, I'm just going to get the actual motion on the floor here. Can you just put back, does that bring back recurring funding request? So that we're clear that that's what we're talking about. Okay. Okay, I think that's clear. Is that
So
good?
I will move that second motion.
Okay. And
Seconded.
moved and seconded, thank you. Anything-
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Braithwaite.
Yeah, I think that, don't we have something in place where there is funding that we do for 3 years in a row or something like that, that isn't included in our grant in aid? And that might fall under that, this amount might fall under that?
Yeah, there are, that's why I didn't want to put down in grant. I think staff can look at this and maybe reach out to Songhees and Esquimalt and just understand what their plans are and how this might best fit. These numbers are going to shift or change over time, so I think that's probably best if we leave it at this point vague to bring back. Okay, seeing no other questions, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That carries. That concludes the open portion of our meeting. Have a great evening, sir. Thank you. We have a motion to close the meeting.
Do we have to say it all out loud?